as we're in the group. What we're going to begin discussing today will be understanding the college application timeline, overview of the Common Application, step-by-step guidance on how to fill out the Common Application, and just ideas to organize, how to organize your activities, how to avoid common mistakes, and just really how to plan well and plan better. I also want to add, we're going to talk about how to just prioritize high school, understand what is EA, early action, early decision, what is restrictive early action, what is regular decision, how does all of this work? So we're going to go through it. Another thing you should know is these are friendly webinars. So anytime you have a question, just type it in the chat. We're going to get to the chat box at the end, but just remember, this is not something where it's very rigid, formal. And I just want to remind you that our guest speakers recently went through the college application process themselves. So even as we're here right now, don't feel intimidated. Don't feel like I don't know, or I don't. Just remember, like, these are people who just went through the process. And I myself remember being there and going through this process. So please remember that this is not a time for you to be shy or to feel like you shouldn't ask any questions. We will answer as many questions as possible just towards the end, because we want to go through the slides and go through information with you. And with that being said, I want to start first and foremost by saying thank you. Thank you so much. Milena Galetto, you have given me so much joy and so much wisdom. I can't believe it. Once upon a time, you were a 6th and 7th grader at Kweller Prep. Look, today you're leading a Zoom and showing everyone, you're passing the torch and showing students how they can apply to college and how they can be successful. And you are someone who I have so much admiration and respect for. Thank you so much for being a leader and someone who passes the torch. Not everyone does that. So I really want to start by saying huge thank you. Cecilia, what can I say? You are phenomenal. Cecilia, a week ago, ran the Bronx High School of Science tour. She was helping at Kweller Prep. We had over 100 families who came, who wanted to see the school. What's it all about? And I'm so proud and honored to share. Welcome to this beautiful, your very first webinar at Kweller. So I want to share. How old are you right now? Are you on mute? If you could unmute yourself, tell us.
Yeah, I am 18 right now, current senior, going into college next year.
We are so wowed and impressed. 18 years old, and you are co-hosting a webinar, helping students, and you are passing the torch. Beyond impressive. You have been a busy, busy person lately. So thank you. Thank you for this special moment. And Milena, thank you. And I'm so happy to share with you that they created great slides as a starting point as we are navigating ins and outs. So without further ado, let's get started. And again, major thanks and gratitude for hosting this webinar. Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to begin screen sharing. If people can let me know if they can see the screen. Can we see the
We
presentation?
got it. Yep,
Okay,
we're all
perfect.
set.
Okay, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Milena Galetto. I just finished my first year at Harvard, and I graduated from Bronx Science last year.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Cecilia or Cece. Um, I also am currently finishing up my time at Bronx Science and I will be attending Harvard University in the fall. So can't wait to be with Milena.
Yay! Okay, and we're just going to talk, like Ms. Kweller said, an overview of the college admissions process. And that's what we're here to talk to you guys about today. Um, okay, I'm trying. Can people see I don't know why it's drawing. Okay. So basically an introduction. I remember when I, was in high school, the whole college admissions process seemed so overwhelming. And, that's not what we want it to be. The college is exciting and there's a lot of information out there. So we just want to help you, like Ms. Queller said, pass the torch down of information to make this exciting process, more accessible and less stressful. Some general advice that we want to give is research. There's so much information about out there. There's so many schools, and the research is out there. You just have to find it. And, this is sort of a first step to help you get started with this whole process. We'll talk about many resources that are out there that you can use, like the Common App. and, like I said, an overview, and hopefully get you started on this college application process.
Yeah, okay. Excuse me. Before we get into like the Common App and just like going through like what that's all about, I just want to do like a brief little timeline about like where you guys are right now, where you should be at the beginning of next year and what those things should look like generally. So in junior year, this is really when it starts. Junior year is the time where, they're the grades that really matter for college. It's when you're taking your hardest courses you have yet. Um, and also, it's when you're really starting to do, the college research. So the first thing you all should be thinking about in junior year is your letters of recommendation. Um, and one big way to, be proactive about this from the beginning is building good relationships with your junior year teachers, of course. We'll talk about letters of recommendation more in depth later in the presentation. But yeah, just be proactive, get to know them, raise your hand in class. And that's really a great way to start. And then ask them for a rec letter, usually in the spring of your junior year, but we'll talk about that a little later. And then SAT. I would say junior year is the perfect time to start studying SAT or ACT, whichever you plan on taking, or if you plan on taking both. Um, and obviously, Kweller Prep has a lot of resources, including courses and workbooks. So if you're looking for some SAT prep, this is a great place to be. Um, and then also, junior year is a great time to start brainstorming your personal statement ideas. We'll talk about personal statement in depth tomorrow. We have a great slideshow about that. But basically, because it's really important and it's the first piece of writing and the main piece of writing a lot of colleges will see, you want to just start brainstorming what's important to you. What do you think would be a good topic and a topic of interest for you all?
Okay, and like Cece was saying, after you do all that for your junior year, you're going to have the summer before your senior year. And this is a very, very important summer in terms of your college applications. Because you have, free time from school. So this is a great chance to start. And I like to tell the students that I tutor to finish their personal statement in the summer of before their senior year. Because once you start school, you're going to be in your classes, you're going to have a lot of work, your extracurriculars. Life is going to be stressful again, and you won't have as much time as, one would like to dedicate to the personal statement. So, what I like to tell the students I work with is get it done the summer before your senior year. And you're going to go through many drafts because it's an important essay, like Cece mentioned. I personally went through seven, which can sound daunting right now. Um, which is why it's important, that you reach out to resources, to people, ask for feedback. Great people to ask, to take a look at your personal statement, at your drafts, and ask for feedback are your English teachers, guidance counselors, and, Kweller Prep tutors. We do this. We give feedback to students, and it's important that people get feedback from, you know, others besides yourself. And it's important that you have a schedule because even though you're not in school, summer, you can have a lot of things going on. You might, maybe have an internship, do some sort of program, or you might be traveling, and it might be easy to say like, oh, I'm just going to leave it till the end of the summer. Oh, I won't do it right now. But, the end of the summer will come and you might have not started your personal statement and then you're just going to be stressed. So it's important that you set a schedule for yourself. And for some people, that might look like, ooh, every 2 to 3 days, I'm just going to set an hour aside and work on this personal statement. But it's important that you have that discipline and that you really stick to it because this is an important time, and especially for the personal statement. It's an important part of your college applications. So it's important that you dedicate time to it. The summer before your senior year is also a great, great time to visit schools. We'll talk about this a little later as well, but a lot of schools, especially in the summer, they host tours or open houses almost every day, sometimes even multiple times a day. So it's important that you visit the schools to make sure it's the right fit for you. You'll also want to make sure you finish your college list, which is, the list of schools you're going to be applying to, because you don't want it to get to it's time to apply and you're still not sure which schools you want to apply to. And also, you want to fill out the common application. We'll talk about this later in the presentation and we'll go through in depth the specific parts. But this is something that you can get done in the summer so that you're not stressing about this. And the overall theme is that, there's a lot of different components to the college application process. And the earlier you start, the better, because you're not going to be stressed about it because, it can be overwhelming. So the more prepared you are, the more time you have, the easier and the less stressful it will be for you.
Okay, so after the summer, I think, summer before senior year is a lot, but it really helps to make it so that senior year fall, which is, I think, the most stressful, it reduces that workload that you have. So summer is a great opportunity to do that. Um, During your senior year fall, the big thing is keeping your grades up because those are grades colleges still look at. And then you'll be finishing your supplemental essays. For me, I finished my personal statement over the summer and a few supplemental essays, but I was doing a lot of the like intense like supplemental writing during the first 2 months of my senior year fall. Um, and also submit your applications. Applications are going to be due November 1st for most schools, for some schools, mid to late October, for some schools, mid to late November. It does vary, but obviously that is in the fall and you'll be submitting then. And then post submitting your applications, you will get reached out to some schools about interviews. Because of the pandemic and just because of, the change to like a lot of things being virtual, a lot of schools don't have interviews anymore, and some schools have optional interviews. And some schools offer interviews to some people and and they don't to others. So it would really depend on which school you're doing. I only had about 3 interviews during my college admissions process. But to prepare for these in general is practice. Practice as much as you can. Practice with people that have gone through the process before because they know the type of questions that are going to be asked. There's always the, why this school question. There's always the what makes you unique question. So those are good general questions to know. Um, and of course, practice with the people you're comfortable with, but also practice with people that, are your teachers or your guidance counselor that you might not know as well, but people that, will push you to answer maybe in an uncomfortable setting, because sometimes the interviews won't be, the most comfortable. Um, and then, of course, your quote unquote elevator pitch, you know, start off your interview with who you are. Always say your full name first. You want to, have that good first impression, what school you go to, where you're from. Um, I would mention like what you might want to study if that's something important to you and something what you're really interested in doing if you're an athlete, if you're into community service, that type of stuff. And don't ramble at the beginning, of course, but give that brief introduction of yourself. And then the third thing I would say is always send a follow-up email after thanking your interviewer for taking the time to interview you. That always leaves a good impression.
Okay. I know that was a lot of information, but we sort of broke down the timeline by, the junior year, summer, and then your senior fall. But now we're going to break down the different components we talked about. And we're going to start off with the college list. So basically, one of the most important things throughout this whole process is I tell kids to always stay organized, be as organized as you can be, make spreadsheets, make Google Docs, and some people might think like, oh, that's doing too much, but no, the more organized you can be, it's always going to be the better. We'll talk more about this in our Wednesday webinar, but you want to make sure that with the schools that you're applying to, you have a great balance of the different types of schools. I'm sure everyone here are excellent students. We're aiming high for top schools, but you also want to make sure that you're applying to schools that we call safety and match schools, schools that you're very likely to get into, so that you have that as a backup. And you want to make sure that these are schools that you would be very happy going to. So you want to make sure you tour these schools, that you visit them, but we'll get all into that in a later webinar. But in terms of the college list, You want to make sure you're keeping track of important information like the school's acceptance rates, the average SAT or ACT and GPA of a typical student who gets into that school, where the school is, and the student body size. These are things, that are going to affect your student experience there. So it's good that you're keeping track of it in your spreadsheet. And lastly, and we're going to have a whole webinar on this, but the financial fit of the school, whether they're need blind or, filling out the net price calculator, which we'll explain, and seeing how much is this school actually going to cost you? Is it going to be realistic for you to attend this school? This is the sort of information that, you need to be considering when you're making your college list and deciding which schools you want to apply to.
Okay, now we're gonna show you guys two different examples of um, what a spreadsheet could potentially look like for you. This first one is really a rough draft, a first draft, like you're being thrown into it right now and you just want the basic information. This is an example of what that might look like. So obviously you have a certain number of schools, and of course, the school name is most important. And then you have the website. This is really important because it allows you to have quick and easy access. So when you're doing research in the future, you can quickly press on that link and, see whatever you want to see on the website. Admissions rate is really important as well. And I definitely recommend all of you to put that in your spreadsheet because it can this and average SAT and average GPA can allow you to make kind of an inference about which schools are a good match for you, which schools are target schools, which schools are reach schools, and which are safeties. So, for example, Temple University on here has an 83% admit rate. So that would probably be a safety, potentially, depending on, where you guys are at. And then average SAT matters because you all, I'm sure, are starting to study or have already even taken one or two tests. So that's a good statistic that you can directly compare to yourself. And same with average GPA. And then, of course, location. A big part about college and the college process is figuring out what you want. Do you want to go far from home? Do you want a completely new experience? Do you want to be in a city? Do you want to be totally not in a city? Do you want to get out of New York? For a lot of people, a lot of my friends, they had zero New York schools on their list. That's something that's completely up to you. And a lot of my friends had all New York schools because of, money concerns or just because they love the city. And then size, undergrad size, is really important as well because that'll shape a big part of your experience and the culture at your school. Do you want a more intimate school with even less than 5,000 students, or do you want a very big, community-oriented school like a huge state school or something like that? Those are all things to think about. And then, like we mentioned, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, um, always put when the application is due. So for this spreadsheet, it has early decision and regular decision. If you're sure, okay, I'm not applying to these schools early, I'm just doing regular, you can just put the regular submission date. But if you have, multiple schools you're applying early action to, put those deadlines as well.
Okay, and like Cece mentioned, this is sort of, an initial spreadsheet so you can sort of get an idea of the schools that you're applying to. Maybe you're still deciding which schools you want to. Um, but what I like to do, and this is a screenshot of part of my application spreadsheet, um, is that once you're actually decided about which schools you want to apply to, but you're in the process of writing your application, I like to help people create these sort of spreadsheets. And, I like to make them colorful and nice to look at, but, that's personal preference. But I like to put information about the actual application that you are writing. So for me, that includes information including the number of supplemental essays that each school has you submit. And you might want to take a look and notice that some schools they only ask you for one. Other schools they might ask, Yale and Brown, they ask for 7 additional essays. And that's something, you want to be thinking ahead about. So I like to have it right there on my spreadsheet. I also hyperlinked my Google Documents, like Cece said, quick and easy access to when you're working on all these applications. Because I know me personally, I hate to have all the tabs open because it makes me stressed out. So I like to have my things hyperlinked. And I have just my progress. Something that was actually very helpful when I was doing interviews for school is noting exactly which major or concentration I applied as, because that might vary from school to school, because they just might offer different things. So noting that all in one concentrated place was very easy. And, I hyperlinked my portal. And we'll explain what that is later on. But basically, once you submit an application to a university, they'll send you a link to create a portal so you can submit further information to your application. And then ultimately, that's where you'll view your admissions decision. Um, and then I'd like to note, extra things that specific schools have for their applications. So for example, like you can see here, Brown asks you to submit a video of you talking about yourself or answering a question for about 2 minutes. And that's something that I'd like to know. And they do that instead of an interview. Or Dartmouth, they actually have you submit a peer recommendation from a friend. So in addition, and we'll explain more in depth about the recommendations, like Cece mentioned. But in addition to having recommendations from your teachers and your guidance counselor, Dartmouth asks for a recommendation from a friend, which is I think is interesting, but it's something that you need to plan ahead for, figure out which friend you're going to ask, make sure they write the recommendation, and things to be on top of. And Bowdoin also does a video, so these are all things I noted. Also, different schools have, if you're applying for financial aid, different schools have different deadlines for when you have to submit different components of the financial aid application, but that'll be explained in a different webinar. But that's all information I like to store in a separate spreadsheet where I can keep all my information because it's better to stay organized. You have all your information concentrated, and it's easier when you're navigating this whole process.
And I just want to tell everyone, like, really look at the love, time, and attention put into these spreadsheets. So this is, Milena, if you could elaborate, this is a very authentic spreadsheet. So tell us about the creation. So is this like a $10,000 software? Is this like a $50,000 like Ivy Secret? Like, where did you get this original idea for the spreadsheet? How much was this original idea?
So this was all free on
Zero.
Google Sheets.
This is
I love
Google
to make
Sheets, everybody. Pay attention.
I'm somebody who loves to make spreadsheets. I like to make them colorful, and it's all very easy on Google Sheets. Um, and it's something that I created for my application when I was applying to colleges. But, it's something I also now help students create because, it can be overwhelming. So it's very simple and easy, and for me, fun to create. So.
And color coded because that's something I personally do all the time. I love to color code everything. So just major A plus. This is superb.
Okay.
Yeah. Something I will add about, that last slide about there being kind of some extra stuff for some schools. For Dartmouth, the peer rec is optional actually. Um, but here's a quick little tip for all of you. If a school ever says something is optional, it is not optional, do it. So, that's just a little thing to keep in mind. I think for a few other schools, they have optional videos as well. So if you're applying to a school and they have an optional thing, just do it. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about, what the admissions officers are looking for in an application. And yeah, so the first thing obviously is academic performance, and that's obviously a numbers game partially, but it's also about what type of classes you're taking. So admissions officers love to see good grades, of course, but they also like to see upward trends. Let's say you didn't have a great time acclimating to high school and your freshman year grades aren't great, but then we see improvement in your sophomore year, we see a lot of improvement in your junior year, and senior year grades are like stellar. Admissions officers like to see that, sometimes even a little bit more, because it shows you're willing to put the work in. It shows that you have developed study habits as you've gone through the course of your high school experience. And then the other thing is, it's not all about the grades, it's also about the courses you're taking. I do think personally, especially with some higher level universities, they like to see if you're in more challenging courses, even if your grades are a tiny bit lower than they would be in the easier level courses. So it's all about showing that you want to learn and you love to learn and you're willing to push and challenge yourself. And then the next bullet point is about standardized test scores. And we'll talk a little bit and we'll talk about all of these bullet points in more detail as we go through the slideshow. But you'll either be taking the SAT or ACT. Some schools still don't require you to submit your test scores. So if you're super not a standardized test taker, there are a lot of schools and a lot of very competitive schools that will look at your application just like any other app, even if somebody that is submitting their scores. Um, Most Ivies at the moment and for your guys's upcoming admission cycle will not be test optional, I'm pretty sure. Um, we'll talk about that a little later. And then extracurricular activities. This is very, very important because the admissions officers want to see well-rounded students and they want to see passionate students. And a great way to showcase both of those things are through the ECs you do. And kind of a misconception that a lot of people talk about is that your application needs to like follow a trend. So if you want to apply to be a math major, all of your extracurricular activities should be like math team and should be like science Olympiad and stuff like that. While those, of course, help, admissions officers really like to see somebody that's well-rounded and likes to dip their toes in many different things. So for me, I'm a three-sport athlete, but I'm also a musician that's been in a band in my school for 4 years. I'm also in student government, and all of these things show leadership, but show them through different activities, which is very important, of course. And then the fourth thing is letters of recommendation. And one should be written by a STEM teacher, which means either a math or science teacher, and then one should be a humanities teacher, so either social studies or English. And we'll talk about that in depth later.
Okay, Cece mentioned a lot of this, but just more specifics in terms of academic performances. You will be submitting your GPA or your average to the universities that you're applying to, and this will all be submitted through the Common App, which we'll explain in a moment. A lot of schools' GPA are on the 4.0 scale. Some schools are on the 100 scale. Bronx Science was on the 100-point scale, but it really just depends on the school, and that really doesn't matter what scale your school uses. Some schools do a weighted GPA, but these are all things that the universities distinguish when they're considering your application. So they're not going, and for those who don't know, a weighted GPA basically gives you like more points essentially for harder courses. But the universities are going to be considering whether your GPA is weighted or unweighted, or whether your school does grades on the 100-point or 4.0 scale. So really, truly what you should be worried about is trying your best in your classes, putting your best effort, studying for your exams, getting high grades, worrying specifically on the decimal points, the GPA. That's energy that could be better spent on actually studying, for your classes, doing better in them. So sometimes, it's easy to get overwhelmed, to stressed out. But I like to tell people, take a breath. You can only control what's in your control, and that's how you perform in your classes, the effort you put in. So, you know, this can all be overwhelming, but take a deep breath and focus on what you can control. And like Cece mentioned, consistency matters. So maybe you had a rough time freshman year, but showing that you're consistently studying, trying to be better, developing better study habits, that's something that colleges consider. So that sort of thing is very important when your colleges are considering your GPA and your grades. But like Cece mentioned, it's also not the only part that they're considering. So it's important that we don't get too stressed out.
Yeah, so on that same exact note, um, it's not just about grades, it's also about the courses you're taking. So, of course, challenging yourself shows that you're ambitious and that you want to be there in the classroom and you want to be there at the college level as well. And selective colleges like Ivies and top 20, top 30, top 50 schools expect you to be taking the hardest classes available to you, especially in core subjects. And I highlighted the word available because I understand that, some schools and the admission officers also understand that some schools don't have a plethora of very high level courses. They don't have a lot of AP or IB courses, and that's okay. And they are able to see that and recognize that because they see the courses available to you as well. So what matters is that you're pushing yourself in the context of your school and in the context of your peers. So are you, kind of falling within what's normal for your particular school and your grade, or are you kind of pushing yourself in that context? Um, and core subjects are most important. The core subjects are English, math, science, history, and foreign language. And these are what matter most to admissions officers. Of course, things like music, art, not really gym, I won't lie, but music, art, other, electives are important, especially if they connect to your extracurriculars. But the core subjects are really what they're looking for in terms of coursework and grades. And some schools care more about specific things. And these are things you can even put in your college spreadsheet once you make them. So, one example of this is Princeton likes to see 4 years of language at high school. So, for me, I knew that Princeton wasn't for me. So, I was like, when planning for my senior year courses, I was like, okay, I don't need to take um, a fourth year of language because none of my schools really want to see that in my application. However, schools like MIT and Harvard, especially if you're going to be a STEM major, like to see challenging STEM classwork. So I decided to take two really challenging math courses in my senior year. So it can be very personal depending on, what schools you really like. And if you were planning on, REAing, which is like the early application to Princeton, then I would definitely recommend, taking that fourth year of language. And then a little bit about advanced courses as well. If you have, access to AP courses, IB courses, honors courses, dual enrollment, and dual enrollment can be done, outside of your school. There are many colleges, especially, CUNYs that offer very cheap or even free dual enrollment classes. And that shows colleges that, wow, you're already taking classes that are on the college level. Um, and obviously, you don't need to take every AP or IB class offered. It does matter, what's your area of interest? What do you like to do? What do you think, would be the classes you could actually, succeed in? But also push yourself. If you absolutely hate history, I wouldn't recommend taking an AP or IB history course. But if you think it would be an interesting class for you, then do it. And of course, balance is key. Do not take 7 classes and have them all be IB courses. That would definitely not be a good idea because when it comes down to it, your grades might suffer because you're pushing yourself to the extent that there's nothing you can really do. You can't study for 7 high-level courses at the same time. It would be too
And
much.
And I want to add, which is amazing news, incredible news, that the rigor of courses always positions you higher up at the top and makes it better. So I do want to share that whenever the opportunity arises to go strong, you always have. Some of us who are in the webinar right now, especially the IB kids at baccalaureate high school, they are going to have course rigor galore. So I think it's 6 IB courses that are required with these students. So that's even a wow, a raise of an eyebrow from 2 Harvard University admits. Isn't that incredible? So the rigor is in out of this world impressive, and the colleges will see. Also, in the guidance counselor, I think it's called the guidance counselor recommendation letter. I have to show you, or the counselor reports. They actually, it's noted that these students, especially on the IB curriculum, you're taking some of the hardest classes in the world. I actually am telling you that IB diploma consists of taking the hardest classes in the world. So I just want to add that in also, that um, well, I don't know how to say this to you Bronx science students, but these IB kids are taking globally recognized courses. I mean, they really level up. So sorry to break it to you, but you're out of this world, out of this league in terms of rigor. Baccalaureate kids are required. They have 6, 7 courses that are required that are super high level. So just remember that you are on the hierarchy. I mean, I just kind of want to put that out there. That's all. I'll stop talking, as you were saying. Okay.
Wow, I feel like I feel like I need to like defend myself here, but I can't. That's amazing.
Do you
Um,
believe? Yep. These are the kids.
and then again, I think like course rigor is as important, if not more important, than actual grades and that number. So, that's an amazing opportunity. So yeah, next slide.
Wait, I just wanted to share a little story that was relevant to what advice Cece was giving in terms of specifically Princeton and language courses. So I was somebody who knew I was going to apply to Princeton. It was one of my top schools. And I knew that, they need, or they really like applicants who have 4 years of language. And I'd actually taken Latin all of middle and high school. And my junior year, I'd taken AP Latin. And for my senior year, there were no more Latin courses that Bronx Science offered. So, because I was thinking ahead and thinking of the requirements for schools like Princeton, I decided to take an AP Spanish course just because, that was on the back of my mind. So, like, that's sort of like the thinking that you want to be doing and considering, because the decision for what courses you might be taking your senior year, you're making your junior year. So these are things that you need to know ahead of time. Know that schools like Princeton require 4 years of language. So it's important that you're prepared, that you're ahead, um, and that you're thinking about these decisions throughout your high school, especially junior and senior year.
So I just want to rephrase what you did because I want to go through step by step. You went super out of the box. So you were done with every single Latin course offered in the history of Latin in Bronx High School of Science ever. And you said, well, I need another language because Princeton likes to see 4 years of language. I'm applying to Princeton. You said, you know what, I'll just take a different language. And that's how you met that 4 years of language requirement. You were ultimately accepted to Princeton. So that out of the box thinking is really cool, and that's a neat trick. So kudos, bravo.
Thank you. But that's the sort of thinking, that you want to have when you're going into this admissions process. Okay, in terms of standardized tests, there's a couple that you're going to be submitting um, to schools when you're applying. Like Cece mentioned earlier, there's the SAT and the ACT, and you can choose between the two exams because they are a little different. So they cater to different people's skills. So you want to find the one that you're stronger at and submit those scores. But like Cece mentioned, some schools, because of the pandemic, were test optional, and some schools still are. But a lot of schools are going back to being to requiring a standardized test, either the SAT or the ACT. So it's important that you start planning ahead. Taking practice tests, working out of workbooks, taking courses if you'd like, to make sure that you're prepared. It's recommended that you don't take them more than 3 times. And in general, the difference between the SAT and the ACT is the SAT is harder questions, but they give you more time, versus the ACT might have some easier questions, but there are more of them and they're much faster. So, they cater to different people's skills. So you just need to, identify what kind of test taker you are and take the test that's best for you.
And then I'm going to add more to it probably later with the SAT and ACT because I want to get into PSAT and national merit scholarships. So I'll add more to this at a later point. But Milena, I believe you were a national merit scholar. Am I correct? Cecilia also, yes? Did you national merit for PSAT? Is that correct? For the PSAT, I just want to let all of you know that PSAT is connected to SAT, so I will touch upon that later. Okay, go ahead.
In addition to either the ACT or ACT that you're going to submit, um, also like the IB exam scores that you take and receive from your high school experience. And we'll talk more into depth about the specifics of which scores you should submit or how the credits transfer for college. But just keep in mind these are scores that you will be submitting to colleges, and they're something that they're going to be evaluating alongside, your grades, your SAT, ACT, your extracurriculars. It's part of the holistic review. And, like I've been mentioning throughout the whole webinar, I'm the biggest supporter of being prepared, taking things with time, being ahead. There's so many resources out there. Kweller Prep has so many resources, courses, workbooks that you can find. Um, you know, it can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be if you find that support.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more specifically about the SAT and ACT. First of all, the SAT is administered by the College Board. Um, I'm assuming some of you may know what the College Board is. The College Board also administers the AP exams, and College Board is where and how you'll be sending your SAT and AP scores to schools. Most schools allow you to self-report SAT and ACT scores within Common App, which we're actually going to talk about very soon. But there are some schools, and this is a list that you should keep track of. There are very few schools that require you to actually send your results from College Board to the school, and that does cost either like around like $30 or $40, but a lot of people can get fee waivers for that. And um, even just taking the SAT is $68 per test, but a lot of you probably will qualify for a fee waiver. A lot of my friends never paid for an SAT or AP test ever. Um, and then what the SAT has, it has a reading, writing, and language section and a math section. It used to have an optional essay section, doesn't have that anymore, and it is all digital now, so it's a little different than it has been in the past. I actually took the first SAT I took was a one on paper, and the next two were digital, so it was kind of weird. I got both experiences. Um, and the SAT is scored out of 1600, 800 for each of the two sections. And each section on the digital SAT has two different parts to it. The first part is going to be kind of easier questions. And how you do on that first part will dictate the type of questions you get on the second part. So if you do very well on the first part, you're going to be getting harder questions on the second part of both the math and the reading and writing sections. And the SAT is typically taken by juniors and seniors. I took my first SAT as in the winter of my junior year, and I took my last SAT actually in the fall of my senior year just to see if I ended up doing better. So that's definitely options for all of you. The ACT is a little different. It's around $65. That could change. I'm not exactly sure because I didn't take the ACT, but the test is a little bit different in the subjects that are on it. So the ACT has an English section, math, reading, and science, and an optional writing section. This is very interesting because if you are a science person, the ACT might be something to look into because there is that additional section on the ACT that's not on the SAT. And the ACT is scored out of 36 points. Something interesting about the ACT as well is it's kind of known, this is debated, but most people think that it's easier to score a perfect 36 than it is to score a perfect 1600 on the SAT. Not that you all should be worrying about scoring a perfect score on either of these tests, which I did not do. And the ACT, this depends on what kind of learner and test taker you are, but is still offered in paper. It's on digital at some places, but it's still offered on paper at some places if that's something important to you.
Okay. And like I mentioned earlier, something that you should be considering, more later throughout, when you're deciding what schools you actually want to attend, is how your IB credit is going to transfer. So it really varies from school to school. Um, some colleges may award credit for high scores on the higher level IB exams, so typically scores of 5, 6, or 7. The standard level exams are less commonly accepted for credit, but some colleges do accept limited credit for high scores. But truly, it varies from school to school. So make sure that you do your research. Maybe this is something that you would want to include in your college application spreadsheet. And this is information that you can find on schools' websites. So, for example, Harvard generally does not take IB credit, while Yale does. And this is something that they specify on their websites and something that, you can look into. And maybe it's one of the things that you're considering when you're considering which college you actually want to go to. Um, and something to note, some selective colleges, for example, the Ivy Leagues, might not award as much credit as other schools might for IB scores. Um, but for example, what I know some schools do is that they'll let you potentially like skip an introductory course and head straight into more advanced courses. Or if there's a graduation requirement, your IB credit might fulfill those requirements and you might be able to take any course you'd like instead. But it really varies from schools to school, so it's important that you do your research.
Yeah, now we'll talk a little bit about extracurricular activities or ECs. Um, these are very, very important for four reasons. One, obviously, it showcases your talent, and that's what you want to be doing. You want to show the admissions officers what you're good at and what you like to be good at and what you like to do. Um, and then the second thing is develop leadership. Um, ECs are a great way to show that you are a leader and that you are, attempting to make a difference in the things you are doing. So for me, I'm a three-sport athlete, and something that obviously being a three-sport athlete shows dedication, but by the time I was a senior, I was captain of all three of those sports. So that doesn't only show dedication, that shows leadership and that you're getting better at something over time, not just at the sport, but at being a leader, being able to, organize a team. So it shows more than just, getting stronger physically. Um, and number three is demonstrate passion. Honestly, I think this is the most important thing about your college app. You want to show that you're a genuine person and that you're unique in what inspires you and what you want to do. And that's ultimately why you want to go to college. You want to, continue that exploration of inspiration. And then number four is, of course, you want to stand out. This might seem a little obvious, but it's true. Your ECs are a great way to show, oh, I really like these things, and these are things that connect to what I want to study. But, being in something super unique, like being a founder of a club, a nonprofit, or being a co-founder, or just being in a very niche field of something that is a way for you to stand out compared to other applicants. So yeah.
Okay, and adding on to what Cece was saying, a lot of the times people might ask, you're applying to schools, why does what you do outside of school matter? And the way that I like to explain this is, think about it from the perspective of an admissions officer at a selective university. You know, they're getting thousands upon thousands of applicants, and many of them are going to have really great grades, and they're going to be a lot of valedictorians in the applicant pool. And so the way that you make yourself stand out from, this whole pool of really smart, really academically oriented applicants is by showing them what you do outside of school, why you're an interesting person, and what you would contribute to the campus if you were to be admitted. Um, so like Cece mentioned, these are all things that you can demonstrate throughout your extracurricular activities. And some overall tips is that, depth over breadth. It's better to be deeply involved in a few things than barely involved in many. Um, and like Cece mentioned, with her sports, it's good to show a progression. Maybe you start out in an activity and you're a member, and then, you eventually work up your way to be a leader or the captain of that activity. Or like Cece mentioned, founding something that you're passionate about. Because it shows schools, that you are passionate, that you are committed, and you will contribute to the community if um, you were to be accepted, because that's ultimately what they're looking for. Colleges are looking for students who are going to be involved, students who are interesting. Um, when you go to the dining hall, they want students who are going to engage in interesting conversations and have experiences that they can talk about. That's the sort of thing that they're looking for. And you want to demonstrate that through your extracurricular activities. Um, I think we mentioned this earlier, but it's good when you can connect your activities to your academic interests, but that doesn't have to be like a limiting factor. So many people I know who I've met in my first year of college um, are um, super smart in one specific niche thing academically, but then one day I found out they're actually like a musical prodigy as well, and that's something they have like on the back burner that they've been doing their whole life. So, your academics don't have to be related to all of your extracurricular activities, and that's something to keep in mind. And also just being honest and genuine. These are activities you're going to be spending a lot of time doing. So, not only do you want to enjoy it, but from the admissions officer's perspective, you can tell when somebody genuinely cares and is passionate about, making an impact or doing a certain thing. And that's the sort of thing that gets people into college, being genuine, doing things that you care about, because you're going to put more effort. It's going to be more authentic. And that's something that translates when you write about it. Um, It'll show up in the letters of recommendations. If it's things that you're truly passionate that you bring into your class discussions, that sort of thing. You want it to be genuine.
Okay, let's talk more in depth about letters of recommendation. We mentioned this in passing at the beginning, but let's get into it right now. So, first of all, what the heck are they? They're, formal letters written by your teachers, one written by your counselor, and there are supplemental recs that you could get from a mentor that you have, or an additional teacher, a coach, someone like that. And they really do support your college application and are important for the admissions officers to see how you engage with other people and how other people have received you as a person. And letters of recommendation are required by most colleges. At least one is required by most colleges. Um, However, on average, most colleges typically require two teacher recs and one counselor rec. A counselor rec is a little bit different because counselors usually do just start writing your rec and know that they're writing it. However, for the teacher recs, you do have to, choose which teachers you're going to end up asking for recs and choose, when you're going to ask them, etc., etc. And also, like I said, some schools allow a supplemental non-teacher rec, and of course, you have to ask that person as well. And who should write them? First of all, the people you trust the most should write them, and the people you think like you the most should write them. So if you are choosing in between your English and history teacher to write one of your recs, don't choose the class that you have the better grade in. Choose the class that you participate the most in, the class that you're the most passionate about, or even the class that you think you're going to be ultimately majoring in something similar. Um, and your school counselor, like I already said, has to write one of your college recs.
And something I just want to add, I know this is something that happens at Bronx Science, and I anticipate it happens at other schools, but there'll sort of be like rumors that go around that be like, oh, this specific teacher writes really good letters of recommendation, so you have to get it from this teacher, or, those sort of rumors. Um, and coming from somebody, I actually got to read my admissions file back from Harvard, and you get to do that at the school you end up committing to. Um, But ultimately, I think it's best to get a letter of recommendation from, like Cece said, the class you're most passionate about or the teacher you have the best connection with. Even if you have people telling you, oh, this person or this specific teacher writes the better recommendations, you have no way of knowing that, you know? And what you do know is the connections you've made, the effort you have put in, the passions that you have. And so you want to move forward with the information that you have that is real and that's concrete and not by rumors from people that you've heard. So I always, tell people go with the teacher that you've best connected with that can speak most highly of you. And that might not be the person that everyone is talking about in your school that says this person writes the best letters of recommendation. Um, but more about that, how to ask your teachers for them. We highly, highly recommend that you ask them in person. Don't ask over email. It's more personal that way. And hopefully it's with the teacher that you've already established a bond with that, you can go up to them after class or in office hours and, ask them. And ask early because, especially junior year teachers are going to be writing so many letters of recommendation that I know some teachers that they set a certain number and they say, I'm not writing more than 50 recommendations. And if you don't ask me before my spots are filled up, I can't write one for you. So you want to make sure that you ask early, ideally in the spring of your junior year. And like I mentioned earlier, choose somebody who knows you well and can speak to your strengths and your abilities. Sometimes teachers will ask you to write a little summary or reflection or submit a sort of resume or a brag sheet so they have things to pull from. And you can offer that, but only send it to them if they say yes or if they ask, just so that they can have more information about you. What not to do, don't ask over email, go in person. Don't ask a teacher that doesn't like you or that you don't have a good time with in class. The most important thing is that you pick a teacher that you have a great relationship with. And don't get two teachers from the same subject. Like Cece mentioned, you want it to be balanced to one STEM, one humanities.
And then am I okay? I want to chime in quickly with the rec letters. It's a really good idea. I highly recommend start the whole rec letter process early. And I know for sure Milena and Celia are going to be like, yes, start the rec letter early. My advice to you, charm, charm, charm. Write a thank you letter before you even start. How did I start this webinar? With a thank you. Before we even launched the webinar today, I started with gratitude. My advice to you with the rec letter, on steroids. My advice to you with a rec letter: hello, dear teacher. I just want to thank you in advance for this amazing opportunity I had to be your student. I'm so lucky that I got to be your student. I actually do that with my son. I say, I'm so lucky that I get to be your mommy. I'm so lucky. And I always I tell each of my kids, you're my number one. I mean, I say it in separate rooms and they don't hear me and I whispered in their ears, but like, you're my number one and you're my number one. And because people want to feel special. So with regards to the actual teacher, you have to make the teacher feel special. It's really important. So start the rec letter early, number one. Number two, my best tip: write a thank you letter in advance. I had a great year. This was amazing. By the way, please, if you could, can you write me a recommendation letter? I would very much appreciate it. And here is, I am attaching in Word form. I highly recommend you do this. I am attaching my resume. I'm attaching my extracurricular. I'm attaching my credentials. I'm attaching my photograph. I'm attaching everything you need in this and I'm even attaching a draft, quite frankly, bullet points of key things that you hope they include, because you want to feed the information as well. You need to make sure that you put as much information as you can in that email. Again, we're going to start level 1 email request. That needs to be clearly, I recommend 2-3 attachments minimum. So put everything in. Here are my accolades. Here's what I do outside of class. Here's more that you should know about me. Put in the whole kitchen sink, everything. Follow up, of course. Then you go in person. Hello. By the way, if you want me to get something done, tell me 3 times, 3 different ways. It'll get done. Follow up with a phone call. So make sure it gets done in the end. When you meet with a teacher in person, again, you know what? A handwritten card might make a difference. I was just speaking to someone about this and I wanted to put it in the webinar, but we're a little pressed for time and I didn't. But I just want to share with you that extra touch. what is it to go and to get a handwritten card? Dear teacher, thank you so much for an amazing year. I really feel that you should be one of my recommenders. Or you can do it just regular, just email it, pretty font, nice stationery. Thank you so much in advance. By the way, here is a hard copy of my resume. Here's a hard copy of my brag sheet, which we'll talk about later, credentials. It's really important that you do this very early, really early, ahead of the game early, and that you include as much information about yourself as possible. The recommendation letters are very important. So it's not something that you do last minute. And you need to make sure that everything is submitted. So you need to follow up with multiple emails before you request. At the end of the request, a thank you, you have to check in the back end that it's submitted. Don't treat the rec letters lightly. You have to make sure that that is submitted in tandem during the application. It can actually withhold your entire application. So make sure you have that. Best tips with rec letters is to include a lot of information about yourself outside of class, because they can really write about you holistically, and they don't have constraints or limits when they're writing about you and who you are. Also, if you didn't do well in a class, you could still request a rec letter. So just remember that. It doesn't have to be a class you got an A in. So that's a big thing. And Milena, if you could elaborate on that also, I'll stop. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you might have an experience where you really struggled in a class, even though you really put in effort, and you might have connected with that teacher because you were showing up to office hours, putting in this effort to improve. And, by result, you might have gotten really close to that teacher, or that teacher might have can really speak to the effort and growth you might have shown. So it's sort of like an example of a situation where you might not have done as great or as well as you would have liked in a class, but that still would be a really great opportunity for a teacher to speak on you as a student.
And Cecilia, if you could chime in, and I want to stress to everyone, you must do this early, and you have to include the kitchen sink. Everything about yourself. You need to make this an easy, quick experience. The teachers are not going to spend an hour or two writing all about you, and they need to know all about you. So you need to remind them who you are. And you are Hercules, okay? So remember this. You must speak very highly about yourself. Go ahead, Cecilia. Tell us more about rec letter life.
Yeah. Something I will add is um, a lot of teachers have like a rec letter form. So once they agree to writing your rec letter, they're gonna say, oh, like I have this form you have to fill out, and it might be a few questions. I would recommend type, like write up so much for each question, write up multiple, examples multiple times in class that it pertains to you, multiple things you've done, multiple ways you've connected, so they can choose from it, right? Um, and take your time on that form, on those forms, and really put care into that. One of my very good friends recently who is applying to college, he told me, he was like, hey, this rec letter form is due in a few days, but I haven't finished. What do you like? Do you think it's okay if I ask for an extension? No, do not do that. Submit those forms with time to spare and do them, very carefully, because these are the first things that your teachers are seeing when they're gonna about to start writing your rec letter. And you want them to be impressed, and you want them to have a good taste in their mouth going into writing that letter for you. And that's completely up to your control. You have full control over what you're sending in that first email to them. You have full control over, what the care that you're putting into the information you're sending to your teachers that are writing the letters.
Yeah, and just one quick thing I want to add for letters of recommendation. Like I mentioned, I was able to view my admissions file for Harvard, and one thing they do is they rank you on different aspects of your application, including your extracurriculars, your grades, and they grade you on your letters of recommendation, and they give it equal weight to your extracurriculars and your grades. This is a very, very important part of your application that sometimes people can neglect because it might not seem as extensive as on your end because you're just asking a teacher to write a letter of recommendation for you, but it is so, so important, and it's important that you don't neglect it.
Can you really elaborate on what you just said? When exactly did you review your admissions file? When did that take place?
So I got to view it, I think, in February. And they make it very official. They make you like download this software on your laptop so that you can't really take any screenshots. You're only allowed to view it for 24 hours and you have to request it. I think I requested it months in advance, maybe in November. Um, and they finally got back to me, and what it includes is they rank you, and each school does this differently, but at least for Harvard, they rank you on the different aspects of your application on a scale from 1 to 7, I believe. 1 being the
Like the
best.
IB.
Yes,
Perfect.
like the IV.
Love it.
Um, but
Tell us more about this Harvard ranking you had access to for 24 hours back in February after you were accepted. We want to hear all about that, Milena. Don't rush through this piece.
Um, but instead of being like the IB, a 7 being the high score, 1 would be the best score for the Harvard admissions file. And it's very hard to get a 1. Um, and they rank you on your grades, your extracurriculars, your personal statements, um, your letters of recommendation, your athletics, even if you're not an athlete. I personally am not an athlete.
Milena, darling, can you speak a little slower? The students are rigorously taking notes. Everybody, pay attention. Don't tune out at 9, 10. Milena, do you mind repeating that? Go ahead. Tell us more
Yes, of
about this
course.
application file that you got to see firsthand. What was
So
that? How did they rank you? We want to hear all about this.
they
Do schools do this?
they give
Ding,
you
ding, ding.
ranks from 1 to 7, 1 being the best on your academics, your extracurriculars, like we mentioned, your letters of recommendation, which are so important, your essays that you submit in your application, and your athletics, even if you're not an athlete, which I thought was interesting. I'm not an athlete. Um, but essentially, oh, and also your interview, and you get to see the whole interview write-up. Um, and the interviewers, I didn't know this, but they write a lot. My interviewer, I think, wrote 2 pages based on my interview, um, which is, incredible because at least for a lot of schools, the interviewers aren't people who work in the admissions office. They're just alums who dedicate their time um, to doing many interviews and to doing these write-ups. So that's why it's very important that you thank them because they've put in lots and lots of effort. And your interviewer, they want to advocate for you. They know that you're smart. They know that you've put in a lot of effort, and they want to see you succeed and see you get into the school. So, it's important that you thank them. And if you end up going to a school that you had an interview for, staying in touch potentially with your interviewer, that sort of thing.
Am
That's
I okay with asking a few more questions right now, or should I wait until the end?
We still
Let's do
have
it
the
now.
whole person.
Let me just go into one
Okay.
question. When did this happen? You were accepted to Harvard along with 28 other 30 colleges basically. When did this moment happen where you requested a review of your application? We want to hear this piece.
I think I requested it in November, um, so the fall of my freshman year.
Did they offer this to you or did you request it?
I think this is something that is open to anybody, but they don't really let you know about it. You just,
Oh,
I've
we know
heard,
now.
well, so now
So
you guys
you
know.
so basically you sent an email saying, "Can I review my application?"
Yes, and I got an automated response saying we'll get back to you. And in February they did, and it's this whole software that you have to download because you can't take any screenshots, you can't record, and they're really strict about this, um, and you only have access to it for about 24 hours. Um, so they're very strict, and you have to make sure to follow all the guidelines.
So let's dedicate another minute towards this. So they ranked 1 to 7. So your recommendation letters as a whole were ranked 1 to 7. Your athletics, you're not a student athlete, were ranked 1 to 7. Do you recall your ranking on these areas? Can you give us a rough memory of where you ranked?
I think on for most of them, or on average, I got a 2. I don't recall if I got a 1. but I think on average, because I think what they say is if you get 1-1, then it's very strong and you're very likely to get in. But I don't think most people who get in get ranked 1.
So how did it work if you're not a student athlete? How did they rank you in that regard?
I think they must just, if you're not an athlete, I think I must have gotten a 4 on athlete or something. I don't know.
So you didn't put in much. And then where did you get what do you recall as a 2, which you're saying is basically close to perfect? What do you recall was what were the big topics?
I think so. This is why I mentioned it. I got, I think, a 2 on the letter of recommendation. Oh, so they scored the separate letters of recommendation separately. I got a 2 on my letter of recommendation from my AP Physics 1 teacher, Mr. Zanata, who Cece actually had 2. Um, and he's a teacher I truly connected with. I went to so many of his office hours. Truly, he had a great impact on my high school experience.
So they ranked each individual recommendation letter at Harvard. Each rec letter got a rank of how strong it was.
And versus I got a letter of recommendation from another teacher who I hadn't connected as strongly with, but I had heard from other people that supposedly he writes really good letters of recommendation. And I think that was one of the worst ranking parts of my application. So I would say go with your gut, go ask your letters of recommendation from teachers who you know that you have personally bonded with.
Got it. And Cecilia, do you want to add anything to that? Did you do this did you take this opportunity? Did you know about this? We want to hear all about this if you did this.
I did know about this. I can't do it yet because I'm not officially, on even on campus yet. But this is something that actually I know the legal aspect of this, but this is something all schools are legally um uh, like for kind of forced to do because if you want to see documentation of the reason why you're at a place, you have to be able to see that. So you are able to request this no matter what school you're going to.
Amazing. By
Um,
the way, the same goes with SHSAT. I just want you to know, like you're allowed to do a test view. I just want to put it out there. You're allowed to see your stuff. But
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Even though I haven't seen mine yet, I will mention something. One of my good friends, their older brother, did go to Harvard. He just graduated, and when he requested to see his thing, he was able to see it, and something that was written on the front in big letters. It might be different now, because he, just graduated, so his system might have been different on big letters in the front was good Rex. So that's just kind of on trend. So yeah.
Did you actually see the rec letters? Is that how, do you recall this process? No, you just saw the scoring for the rec letters and you saw that you had good recs.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, so moving on to the common application. We've been talking quite about it. CC wants to.
Yeah, we'll just get right into it. This is the application that you'll be using for most of your colleges. Most of the colleges are on the Common App. You can apply to, I think it's 20 schools on the Common App. Some people I know applied to more, so they had to use different applications. But also there are some schools like Georgetown and MIT and the California, the UC schools that aren't on the Common App that have separate application like portals and platforms. That's something you will find when doing your research. But the Common App has over 1,000 schools, and it's most of them.
Yeah, so like Cece was saying, the Common App is basically a centralized location where over 1,000 colleges and universities are there for you to apply to. And it's very easy because it lets you to apply to multiple schools at once. So once you fill out your GPA, your SAT score, what you got on the IBs, um, you don't have to keep filling it out for each school because you just submit that common application to all the schools. Um, and you can see your list right on the Common Application website. We'll have a screenshot, I think, in a couple of slides so you can see. And You can request your letter of recommendations on the Common App. So it's all very centralized, very simple. The software is very easy to maneuver. And also, if you don't qualify for a fee waiver, all the payments can be made directly in the Common App website.
Okay, now this is going to be a lot of information, but this might be one of the most important slides on this presentation. This is first steps, how to set up your account. So if you haven't already, I would recommend setting your account up now, tonight, today, or tomorrow. If you're tired after this, do it because you're going to need to do it eventually. The first thing to create an account, just look up Common App on Google. It'll be the first link. Sign up as a first year student. There's another button that says transfer a student because if you want to transfer out of your school after the first year or after the first semester, there's a place to do that on Common App as well. So make sure you're clicking the right type of application. And then use an email you'll check regularly. I would recommend not doing like an NYC DOE email if you have one of those emails. I would recommend doing like your personal Gmail or like a school email, like Bronx Science has like personalized emails, and I check that a lot. So I use that one. And then number two, the second thing is once you have your account created, have everything set up, add colleges to your list. And before you even do this, you should be doing your college research, kind of getting a sense of where you want to be, where you think you could be, your reaches, targets, and safeties. And just start adding those on the application, and you can do up to 20, like I mentioned before. Third step is fill out each section. In these next few slides, we'll go into depth about each section. Number four is start your Common App essay. This is, the main piece of writing that goes to really every single school. And number five is request your recommendations. We don't request something without asking a teacher, will they write it, and them saying yes. Once the teacher says yes, then you can go onto Common App and put their email and request it. And a big thing is you have to click the option that waives FERPA rights to ensure your letters are confidential. This is a big thing. Your recs won't be processed if you don't click this, so just click it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. And lastly, the Common App this is where you'll review school specific requirements. Because you have that list of up to 20 schools, you'll see that all the different supplements of all these schools. If you made your Common App account right now, you wouldn't be able to see the supplemental questions because they come out usually either the first day of August or the first week of August. So that's when you'll be able to see them and access them. But once it becomes that time, you'll be able to see each question, each different piece of writing and requirements that are specific to the schools that you're applying to.
Yeah, so like Cece mentioned, there are going to be different sections that you all have to fill out of the Common Application. And we mentioned this earlier, but just to reiterate, highly, highly, highly recommend filling out as much as you can of this over the summer, because once school starts, you're going to have classes, you're going to have extracurriculars, it's going to be hectic, and you can just get it out of the way in the summer. The different sections are the profile. So this is just, basic questions about your name, your address, your demographics. They ask about your family, so your parents, their education, if you have any siblings in college, that sort of thing. Then it goes on to ask about your education. So you'll input what high school you go to, the courses you're taking, and this is where you'll put your GPA and whether it's weighted or on a 4.0 or on a 100-point scale. And then the next section is testing. And like we mentioned, for some schools it's going to be optional, but for a lot of schools it's not, where you submit your SAT, your ACT, and AP or IB scores if you're going to be submitting those scores. The next section is the activities, and you can list up to 10 extracurriculars. And this is why I highly recommend you do it over the summer, because this is something that people might not think is as important, but actually it's one of the things I spend the most time with when I'm helping students apply to college, because there's limited wording and character and word counts when you're submitting the activities. And you have to make sure you get the wording right because you want to put in as much information as you can within that limited scope of the activities section. So this is something, we're constantly workshopping. And there's a lot of tips and tricks when filling out those activity sections that we can get into more specifics in a bit. But we want to make sure we're dedicating enough time to filling out this section. And then the last section is the writing, which is going to be your personal statement, the Common App essay, like the college essay that everyone talks about, the most important one that you're going to be writing, which again, we recommend you try to get it done over the summer if you can. And also in the writing section is going to be the optional COVID/additional information section. So for the COVID essay, it'll be there's a question that's along the lines of how has COVID impacted you? And if it has impacted you in a specific and impactful way, that gives you an ability to write about that. And for the additional information section, a lot of times there are students who have, extenuating circumstances based on how they've grown up or different things that have happened to them that have impacted, maybe their performance in school. And this is sort of the place where they would put that information to sort of contextualize their application.
Okay, here's just a screenshot of what the main dashboard of Common App looks like. So once you've created your account, once you've logged in, this is what you'll see. You'll see at the dashboard tab is all the schools you are applying to. And then obviously in the place that says show more details, that will just show what you have written already for the colleges, not what like you need. That's not the place where you would fill stuff in. You would do that at the Common App section or at the My Colleges section if it's specific to a school and specific to a supplement. The Common App tab is the most important tab. That's the tab that you all can start working on today. That's the tab that's just busy work about, your demographics, your family life, your education so far, your activities, and that is just stuff you can really start doing today. So I would recommend getting, a head start on that. And another point of advice is don't just submit that after doing it once. Look over it again in case like you accidentally put the wrong school that your mom attended or something. You want to make sure all the information is accurate. And then the last tab on this main dashboard for Common App is important because that's where you'll see your FAFSA and CSS profiles and financial aid information. And also it gives recommendations for scholarships that you could apply to.
Yeah, so like Cece said, the earlier you create your account, the sooner you can familiarize yourself with all of this. I mentioned a lot of this earlier, but just to make sure we all have this information, you want to make sure you're using the legal official information. So for example, using your legal name and not a nickname. You're going to have to fill out your demographic section, but it's only for data collection and not for affirmative action anymore. You will have to put in your social security number if you are going to be applying for FAFSA, but if you're not, then you don't have to. Um, and then in the family section, they'll ask questions like I mentioned about your family. If your parents went to college, you'll put which universities or colleges they went to there and for your siblings as well. And then, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to submit your testing scores. Like Cece mentioned, a lot of the schools, it's going to be self-report. So that just means there's a question, what did you get on the ACT? And it'll be blank and you can just write any number, but you have to make sure that you're being honest because once you commit to the school that, accepted you and you want to go to, that school is going to ask you for official documentation supporting that you did in fact get that score. So it's important that you don't lie because there are people who get accepted and then the school found out that they lied about their scores, so then their acceptance got rescinded. So you want to make sure you're not lying. Yeah, because the school is going to ask for proof. Cece, I think you're muted.
Sorry, guys. Anyway, the next section you'll see that's in that Common App tab again, right in the middle, is the education section. And this one's really, really important. This is some of the main information that the admissions officers will be looking at. And what you have to fill out there is the high school you're currently attending, any high schools you've attended in the past, if you transferred or moved or whatever. Um, and this is where you're going to report grades for each class you're currently in and the type of grading system. And this is really important because if you put that you have a 4.0, but you don't specify whether it's weighted or unweighted, it means something different. So it's important to pay attention to that. And then another part of this section is you report all the classes you're currently in. So your senior year classes, because you guys are going to be, doing this during your senior year. So don't do your junior year classes right now. If you're filling stuff out right now, don't put your junior year classes in. Um, Another thing in this section is reporting your honors and awards. This is a very big part of it. You can report up to 5 official honors slash awards. So, for example, if you got national merit, that would be a great place to put it. If you won like a local poetry contest at your school, that's a niche, interesting thing that they would want to see. If you won an MVP award for a sport, stuff like that. And if you run out of spaces, if you have more than 5 awards, you can always put more in the additional info section, but we will talk about that in tomorrow's webinar. And there's also a place to report community-based organizations. So I'm part of a nonprofit that I volunteered for a little bit, but not much. So I didn't put it in my extracurriculars. I instead put it in this section. And then there's a section for future plans, which Milena will talk a little bit about later.
Yes. And so we talked a lot about the activities, but this is while you report them. Um, these are the sort of questions they'll ask, and it's very basic, how many years you competed in that or were part of that. In the interest of time, I will skip ahead. Do we have time to talk about the different types of applications, or should we get to questions?
So I think for today, let's start tomorrow with this information. So we're going to begin right away, 8 on the dot with this, just to go through. If you could even just kind of, we'll continue with this set. I do want to share with parents, really important. This is a family moment. So if Milena, if you could quickly just go back to the college selection, we can go off. Yes. I'm really thankful that so many of us are here, many students, but I want to be crystal clear. This is a very important moment. You will be dealing with FAFSA, CSS profile, college applications. You will have to do school selection. It is very important. You have to include where your parent went to college 20 years ago. So you need to include where your parent went to. Was it overseas? Was it in the United States? So there's a lot of family information you'll have to put in. We will go into every aspect of this with the next set of webinars. But remember, this is not a moment where the parent is disconnected from the application. And again, I'm only referring to one parent. That's all you need, or guardian. But you cannot be disconnected during this time because there will be content specifically. There is a parent profile information piece which you need to get years and dates school attended. I also want to stress FAFSA and CSS. That webinar will take place on Thursday. A lot of technical terms that quite frankly are adult terms that the students have never had to do before. So we're going to cover that. Everyone, let's give this amazing group of really brilliant minds a huge round of applause and a huge thank you. I am going to take a moment, which I love to do, is I ask everyone to unmute. And I'm also going to open up the chat box. So I'm going to begin by number 1. If you could all type in a huge thank you. Thank you so much for doing this and for hosting this. And we're going to, let me open up the chat quickly. Let me see. Hello, chat. Where is it? Can you help me open the chat for all? I want to do this. Where's everyone? How do I do this? So everyone, we're going to open the chat. Milena, help. I need to open the chat.
I think the chat is open.
Yeah.
Open to everyone.
It
Ready?
is.
So
Yeah.
everyone, I'm going to type thank you. I will start the thank you. Thank you. There, ready? So everyone, please type thank you into the chat. Thank you so much to our volunteers and this incredible information that we have today. I also want to say, everyone, let's unmute. I love this part. This is my favorite part of the webinar, where we all count to 3 and say thank you. So we're going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. This was so informative and we got so much out of it and we learned a lot. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. So once again, let's do 3 thank yous. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone, you did a great job and thank you for this incredible moment. And we'll be back tomorrow at 8 on the dot. We're going to be covering all this content and information remaining from today, and we're going fresh into tomorrow's topics. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the 71 members who are here today.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you,
you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the cool chat thank yous. We love that also. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Wow, we got caps locks thank yous also. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's so sweet. A lot of work and effort. Okay. And we will do Q&A time. You can always type into the chat box, and tomorrow we're also going to leave. This is our very first one, so we're going to leave plenty of time. Thank you, everyone. Amazing. Thank you. Very much appreciated, everyone. We're so happy that you were here. Excellent. We really, really mean that. Thank you for the team effort. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Okay. And you can, and we are ready. Okay. Oh, the questions I'm looking, you know what? I'm going to take a picture. Any questions that you have, we will definitely answer any questions you have. I'm going to make sure that it's all noted. Please type your questions in the chat. We are going to always respond. Okay. So any questions you have in the chat, we will make sure. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to take notes right now of what the chat questions are, and I'm going to make sure that we begin tomorrow with these questions. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful. I have everything recorded. We are all set. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody. All right, same place tomorrow. Great job. Cecilia, how was your very first big fancy Kweller webinar? How did that go? The
Felt great.
pressure. 18, do you believe it? 18 years old, leading a college webinar. Did you ever think? This was Milena, by the way, a year ago.
Yeah, she's
Thrown into this, right? Thrown in, remember? Now it's easy, right? Now it's like, I got this, no problem. That's like, it's like a walk in the park, no problem. All right, beautiful. I'm so happy. Excellent, excellent job. All right, and we are going to start 8 on the dot tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to close up, okay? Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.